Hello, and welcome to Work Well with Stephanie Wolfe, brought to you by the Whole Food Health Coach, LLC, where we make your goals our goals, and you're never alone on your wellness journey. Experience the information, inspiration, and collaboration of our Coach in Your Corner partnership. My name is Stephanie Wolfe. I'm a national board-certified health and wellness coach and the proud owner of the Whole Food Health Coach, now in its 9th year, and 5-time winner of the Best of Gwinnett Award in endocrinology, diabetes, and metabolism practices. Rachel, Sherry, and I invite you to visit WholeFoodHealthCoach.com to set up your 60-minute healthy living assessment. Our award-winning 3-phase program is changing lives. Work Well is brought to you weekly and is dedicated to your personal and professional health and wellness. I offer examples from my own life, health, marriage, family, and business. I share my research, my opinions, and my faith designed to bring you compelling content, engaging challenges, and practical body, soul, and spirit support on your wellness journey. Work Well comes to you from my personal desire to live long and strong with passion and purpose, die of old age, and help others to do the same. Now, from living rooms to boardrooms, via Business RadioX, you are listening to Work Well with Stephanie Wolfe. Let's do this. All right. I love to start with a funny story. Do you know that it takes fewer muscles to smile than it does to frown? Actually, smiling typically involves 10 muscles, and frowning requires 43 muscles. So get ready to smile a lot. This is called the new dress. A poor country pastor was livid when he confronted his wife with the receipt for a $250 dress that she had just bought. How could she do this? He explained. I don't know, she wailed. I was standing in the store looking at the dress. Then I found myself trying it on. It was like the devil was whispering in my ear, "You look great in that dress. You should buy it." Well, the pastor persisted. "You know how to deal with him. Just tell him, 'Get behind me, Satan.'" "I did," replied his wife. But then he said, "It looks great from back here, too." I've been there, done that before. So glad you used those 10 muscles that helped you to smile at that. So you've been listening to this podcast. I'm sure that you know that every week I seek to offer you information and inspiration. And I love having guests on my show that help us to all understand the different ways that we can grow in our understanding of information and inspiration. This whole month has been devoted to the men in our life. So I encourage you to challenge yourself, change something, improve something, let go of something, pick up something, start something, restart something, or at least begin a healthy self-dialogue to excite and generate movement towards your healthier self. So today I'm joined with Dr. Austin Shugart, and he is with Thrive Forward Therapy in Suwanee, Georgia. You may recall that we had Dr. Jennifer Wilmoth here also last month during Women's Health Month, and they are both together with other therapists, I'm sure, at Thrive Forward Therapy, and I am excited that you're with me today, Austin.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
He works with men, teens, couples, relationships, concerns, in also depression, anxiety, addictions, and life transition. He's also an adjunct professor at Mercer University, where he educates future licensed professional counselors. He has an additional training also in EFT, the emotionally focused therapy, and Prepare Enrich to help couples to have good relationships at every stage. I love that. Austin lives in the Atlanta area, where he enjoys live music, movies, sports. I heard them talking about baseball earlier, and trying new restaurants, which I'd love to share about that because my husband and I love to do the same.
Oh, yeah.
And most of the time, it says he spends quality time with his family and friends, and he's a member of the American Counseling Association and the Licensed Professional Counselors Association of Georgia. That is a lot, Austin. We were talking earlier about that and how, being a doctor, I said, should I call you doctor? Do you want me to call you doctor? Austin, and you said not so much, and it's not that most important thing, or why you did what you did.
I guess why I pursued all of this education was to help people, and that's, I really find my identity and purpose in my faith, and through that, a lot of that is helping other people. So, it's just interesting. people use titles and credentials to sort of, look at me type of thing. And I could not be further from that, or at least I hope I am. But yeah, I love what I do. And, I think the reason why I just kept pursuing my education and the academics was I wanted to get the most knowledge that I could and be able to provide a platform where God could use me. And thankfully, He has so far. So I hope to keep going with it.
That's awesome. I love the passion that, because I can hear it from your heart and not just your voice. And that to me means more than all the education. But I would say information, inspiration. A lot of times it's the passion that I buy before I buy what you're selling, no matter what it is. And when it comes to mental health, it's something that's kind of personal and really need to connect with that person that you are going to be opening up your heart to. So I'm sure that that's a big part of what you do. And this month, we're specifically talking about men. So since Jennifer was here during Women's Health, I really appreciate the fact that you've taken time out of your busy schedule and probably those that are waiting to spend time with you to be on Work Well with Stephanie Wolfe. So I'm just really happy you're here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So this month, like I said, men's health, and I'm trying everything I can to increase awareness and especially in the area of preventable health problems and encourage early detection and treatment of disease of men and boys. And also research and studies continue to show a significant difference, like I shared last time we were together, when it comes to the health between men and women. So when those differences really drew my attention to certain behaviors, I decided to spend a little time talking about those behaviors. And so we've been doing that, started last week, just kind of laying some groundwork and focusing on men's health this month to just help men get on top of their game, and really stay there. It's, we're not 100% any healthy person. So it's just, it's always a work in progress, right? Process. And so listen to last week's Man Up Part 1 if you have not done that yet. And in honor of today's guest, though, I want to remind you of a few of the stats that I shared last week so that we can bring this topic into focus. And according to the CDC, average lifespan of a man is 5 years less than a woman. And that gap has actually been increasing. The other thing is the top 3 causes of death for men include heart disease, cancer, and unintentional injuries. I like that one. Talking about that last week was so fun. But not fun, cancer and disease and anything that causes death. But 3 was men are almost twice as likely as women to die of a heart attack. So we're going to talk a little bit about stress today. And also significantly more likely to die of cancers compared to women. So the one stat, though, that I think really rocked my world last week when I shared it was that men are less likely to undergo treatment or seek treatment or any kind of help for mental health conditions such as depression, and that CDC says is resulting in nearly 4 times an increase in likelihood of committing suicide. So that's big and scary.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're here to talk to us about this and just kind of unpack, I guess, a little bit about what you do, who you are, and anything that you think our listeners would need to hear about men's health, and at least in that topic, and then we'll go a little farther with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I really do have a passion for helping men, young men, teenagers, and couples. That's sort of my few areas that I like to focus on. But especially with men, because, growing up, you always hear that it's harder for men to talk about their feelings and to get those emotions out there. And for me, it never felt difficult, and maybe that's why I'm in the profession that I'm in. But I always enjoyed being able to express myself, kind of what I was feeling, what I was going through. Not that it was always easy. I mean, there were definitely times where I felt that draw to withdraw and to isolate and not let anybody know what was going on. But I think because of those two things, it really sort of propelled me to want to work with men, to help them to realize that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to involve other people. And in fact, there's the people around you, want to help you. They want to be there for you. And I think that's a lot of times the trap that men can fall into is, they sort of believe that, well, I've got to be the strong one. I've got to not show any weakness. I've got to power through it. And, there's certainly qualities of men that are great to be strong and to persevere, but to do that alone and to do that without help can be very challenging. And I think over time, men can find themselves in situations or seasons where they feel burnt out. They feel like, I can't do this anymore. And by that time, it's usually a crisis or a very difficult season that they find themselves in.
So it probably affects all areas of their life. So if they're feeling a little overwhelmed or insecure, or like you said, they see it as a sign of weakness, and then it's going to affect all the areas of their life, whether it's work or home or, even outside of your own personal shortcomings. It really affects those other areas as well.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the clients that I work with, it's really affecting a lot of parts of their life, particularly with relationships. If there's work stress and, just sort of the things that are happening in life that demand so much of them, it starts to, I think the first thing it does start to take a toll on is your relationships, whether it's your spouse or your children, just your family in general. It can really affect those relationships, which then it's like a domino effect, and that affects more things, and you just kind of keep going down the line.
That's so true. I think the one other point that I made last time was that one of the most problematic behaviors contributing to this lifespan disparity is the non-help seeking nature among men, and you're kind of touching on that. But in all areas, not just in mental health, but in physical health or in emotional needs, even in spiritual health, asking for prayer or seeking counsel, or even being vulnerable enough to share with your wife or your mom or anybody in your family that, like you were talking about, to be able to say that, hey, I'm struggling in this, that they tend to see it as a sign of weakness and use that word too. How can we help them not to see that as being a weakness, but a strength?
Yeah, and that's a tough thing to do, right? Because for so long, our culture has really taught or influenced men to not talk about those things. So to sort of backtrack that thinking can be a challenging process, but still doable. I think a lot of times what I help with clients is once they get in the room and are able to sort of talk about some of those things, they start to see the results of, oh, this is actually good for me and this is helping me. So it's almost like for a lot of men, they want to at least see some results, as to be able to continue to pour out their heart. So, until they see some kind of results, it's always difficult to first get that going. But, that's why usually with men, I just start off slow. It's building rapport, building that therapeutic relationship, because most men, and I think people in general, they want to be seen and they want to be heard. They want you to be able to empathize with them and to really understand that, that's a really difficult thing you're going through. I see you and I hear you on that. So I think really just providing the space for them is a big thing. There's a lot of times where there's just not a whole lot of areas that feel safe for men to be able to want to express themselves, whether that's fear of judgment or just that fear of being vulnerable in front of other men that are around. But I think when they can get to a comfortable space where they feel safe enough to share, then that's a great start.
And it doesn't have to be something traumatic that has happened to them.
Yeah.
I mean, all of us, I always say, all of us need therapy. Really, all of us need somebody to talk to, a counselor, somebody to kind of unpack some of those things with us that we just can't handle at the moment. Sometimes we're stronger than other times, and we can handle certain things. And so we think, well, I got this. And then other times it's more about, just having someone else to look at the same situation and maybe help you to see it from a different perspective. And I know that's what I do as a wellness coach. But for me, it's all about forward movement. So I don't really go back in time and look at anything, in life. But I think a lot of men specifically think it has to be this big traumatic thing that happened. Yeah. And so how do you help our listeners to realize that it's not about those big dramatic moments?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, it's not so much those big traumatic moments or this past trauma. A lot of people do have a great childhood and a great upbringing, but then they find themselves in a season where life has become really difficult. There's really not a whole lot of things in life that we really can or have control of, and we kind of learned that through COVID, where everything shut down and what is going on. But I try to help men. I really do believe in talk therapy, where if someone is willing to just sort of get this stuff out there, explain kind of what season they're in, even to have me as a sounding board, or, I hear I hear you saying this or that, but it's sort of rephrased a little bit, and it gets them to think even more about the problem. So I'm really there just facilitating that conversation and getting them to really think about all the stuff that's in here. Let's get it out, process it, and figure out what's going on and how we can, get you to the place that you want to be and help you to reach the goals that you have.
I think that's great. Facilitate that discussion. I think because sometimes we just keep it all in our head, and we think that it's just all up there, but it tends to come out in anger, frustration, sadness, depression, anxiety, sleep issues, and all those other things that are more, I guess, noticeable as far as the world's concerned, but yet there's all this stuff stored kind of inside. So if you're able to facilitate the discussion, I've been to Thrive Forward Therapy, facilities, and it's beautiful space. It's very warm, very inviting. There's probably nothing that would keep somebody outside the door. Once you go inside the door, it just changes everything. It kind of can open up. I think it's like a metaphor almost. You go inside, you start opening up, to that, the space as well. So
very comfy couches too.
Yes. So. And we don't need to lay down, right?
Yeah, right.
We don't have the old therapy type side of things. Well, let's talk about stress a little bit, because I know men carry a lot of weight on their shoulders, and it's not easy, really, all that men carry. And I know women carry, don't send letters, but, I know women carry a lot too. But I do think women have, I guess, a benefit in a couple of areas. And I want to share some of those, because I think for men, I think balancing can be that struggle that can get too much at sometimes. And when this happens, they can find themselves spiraling a little bit, and that sadness taking over, and then fueled by more stress and fueled by more anxiety. And so it just kind of ends up being this swirling tornado. But our mind can be consumed with unhealthy thought patterns. This is never going to get any better. This is where I've always hit the wall, or I keep making the same mistake over and over again, or any of those kind of things that keep them stuck, or maybe, feeling less than. And some of the stats that I saw said that that men have more difficulty handling stress compared to women because of these couple things. One of them is that women have a better social network, or a better circle of friends to confide in. And, usually we're very verbal. Women are more verbal processors, I think. And so we do have our close friends that we can kind of share everything with. And then the other is that the male mentality tends to avoid discussing their feelings. And you mentioned that earlier. And then lastly, that men are less likely to disclose their struggles, mental health or emotional or otherwise, even to their PCPs. And then it just creates more of that anxiety and sleep issues, or maybe even abuse of drugs or alcohol. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on some of those things?
Yeah, I think especially with the first part, what I hear a lot of that part is a lack of community. Mm. And that's not even just men, but for anybody in general. But I have found community is a extremely important thing to have in life. People that you can count on, people that you can lean on through the ups and downs. And I think it's almost like with men, their younger years, high school, college, you have a good group of friends, then you graduate, you get a job, you get married. You start to almost lose a little bit of that, or it requires more effort to reach out and to maintain those friendships, and to eventually you don't really have much of that anymore. So when you lose that community, you kind of you really lose that outlet to be able to lean on people and talk to people that aren't necessarily your family. Because I think a lot of times it's scary to, sometimes open up to our family, because we certainly don't want them to judge us because they know everything about us. But yet, some of the parts that we don't want them to know, that can be difficult to share with them. But to have a good group of friends and a good community, whether that's through like a small group in church or just a group of guys that get together, every few months or so. I think I always encourage men to have and find meaningful relationships and meaningful friendships outside of family as well.
It seems like a lot of men that I've been around have certain groups of men. Like they have, one group that maybe they play golf with or go to sports games or, things like that, they don't go deep with those people. Those are just the social interaction. And what'd you guys, women are all like, what'd you guys talk about? Like nothing, good shot, or whatever. But then there's, those smaller groups, like you said, or people that you can really own, their struggles, and they can help own yours, and I always say I can carry a corner of your pallet. I always like that scripture, but I think that there's so many people that move from one place to another. Like you mentioned, maybe at school I have, this group of friends, and then at work I have this group of friends, and then around the, sports, or I have this group of friends, and at church, then, there's a different group of friends too. But you can be judged in any one of those spaces. And that's what I like about therapy. And the option to be able to sit with someone who is trained in this, even if it's just you're a good listener, right? You're a great listener, and asking the right kind of questions to kind of pull some of those feelings and those thoughts, so that it doesn't, you can't turn the golf game into a therapy session, with your friends or whatever. And it doesn't have to be that, of course, but I'm just saying, to find the space where you can have that outlet and really be vulnerable and honest and genuine.
Yeah. And, a lot of times, I've had countless clients who have had a conversation with me. This took a while to lead up to this, but, they'll start off with, I've never told anybody this. And then they tell me. A lot of times, even that can be very impactful, because the experience that they have in the therapy room, they can eventually translate that outside of the therapy room. So the therapy room is really a microcosm of what is happening outside of the therapy room, or what could happen outside the therapy room. So even being able to have that space to, I don't want to say practice those conversations, but to have those experiences first in sort of a safer environment will help men kind of more likely, okay, maybe I can talk to my wife about this now, or maybe I can talk to my kids about this now.
I like that. That ripple effect is so important too, because we're an example. So, if a man makes fun of therapy or jokes about, any of those things, or has a hard time with his feelings, then his sons or his even, daughters or other family members are going to feel the same way. It's like, well, I don't want to say anything about that because Dad thinks X, Y, Z. So, and when it comes to physicians, I mentioned PCPs earlier. We all have somebody, at least, physically looking after us. And so when we share mental health issues or things like that, a lot of times the first or the only real answer that they have to some of those things are medication. And that can be an answer. It certainly is a part of answers. But I always teach more skills, less pills. And the value of being able to address some of those things without medication, at least first, and going to a therapist and opening up about some things that are kind of holding you back, or things that you're feeling, or things that you should, the shoulds. I always say should all over yourself. Yeah. So, being able to or open to that versus, the going to the medicine bottle.
Yeah. Yeah. Really when it comes to medication, I know of medications and kind of what they're called and what they're treated for. And I always recommend to people, I think it'd be helpful if you, feel like you do need some medication, to reach out to a psychiatrist, and I let them do their job. And, my job is sort of the non-medication route, or in combination with medication if it's needed. But just to, like you said, instill some of those skills that can be really long lasting for them in their lives. And that's sort of my job, is to focus on, well, what kind of skills can we incorporate in your daily life? What are some of the things that you're going through now, or what are some things that are underneath that we might have to unpack? So that's just sort of my thoughts on it. But yeah, I think you're right. Like you said, medication can sometimes be an easy fix, but more often than not, it's usually medication plus therapy, or just therapy. But medication alone, I just always encourage therapy as well.
Yes, I do too. I do too. And I do think that, like I said, there is a place for that. But when it comes to just everyday stress and all the things that we've been talking about, because everyday stress, stress is a pretty universal term. Everybody uses it for, basically it's the emotional strain and physical tension. Sometimes we feel it physically, but it's really more of an emotional process, and it affects both our mind and our body, of course, in different ways, and it can create all kinds of health issues as well. So I deal with some of those side of things, the higher blood pressure and the body weight, and a lot, like I say, the mental, emotional, and physical stress that or the things that stress affects. And I know fitness plays a big role in men's health as far as that goes, in everybody's health. But science has proven over and over that in specific research that I've read, actually weightlifting is one of the higher benefits. They say promotes more of a just an energy that men have, stronger muscles, and, putting their effort into that achievement and lifting this much weight and things like that. And I loved reading that science. It was very interesting. And of course, I believe nutrition plays a huge role. And this next coming week, I'm doing a webinar for a large corporation, and really focusing on some of these things for Men's Health Month. But I wanted to ask you another thing about the past, like what part the past plays in therapy, as far as sitting with you and talking. Is it something, because I've heard men say, I don't want to dig that up, or that was in the past, and that's true to an extent, but how much is that affecting their ability to cope now and in their future success?
Yeah, that's a good question. Really, sort of how I approach things is I never go anywhere with someone that they don't want to go. So if they know that there's a past, and they don't want to, or they're not ready to unpack it, I never rush that. It's not going to be helpful. for them, throughout the therapy process, but really just in general. One thing I will sort of say on, I guess really what we're talking about here is like trauma. And sometimes there's big trauma, like big T, and then little trauma, little t, like little kind of traumatic events. I had a professor in college or in grad school. It was Dr. Lane, and I still remember this to this day. He said, what you don't deal with will deal with you. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times, what I sort of try to get men to see is, I know you don't want to go there, and I know that there's a lot there to unpack. And also, I think some of that may be affecting you to this day, whether that's relationship trouble, whether that's anxiety, how you deal with stress, depression, things like that. And, with those certain things, we can certainly sort of implement some skills and talk about sort of more solution-focused kind of problems. But, that past trauma is not going to go away. But again, I really put the ball in their court of when you're ready, we can sort of start to unpack that. But I never rush that process.
That's beautiful. I think that helps people to go step by step. They don't have to just show up and tell them the biggest thing that ever happened in their life. And I always say, the one quote I love is that none of us should be defined by the single worst thing that's ever happened to us or the single worst thing we've ever done or any of those things. And I think sometimes we focus on that, even though we're not saying it out loud that we're focused on it, somehow it's affecting how we see certain things and how we treat others or how we treat ourselves, or even whether we think we're worthy of, counseling and that kind of thing. I think sometimes though it's about the financial aspect of, cause I've heard people say, well, I don't want to spend money, doing that. And, and I always think, the side of where we value our core values, those things that are most important to us, that's where most of the money should go, not the car we drive or the TV or whatever. We can buy a new TV. We can get another car. We can even get another house, but your family or your marriage or your, being a dad or any of those things are really important. And it should be, in my opinion, one of the most important things to budget into our, everyday budget.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've had clients who they have told me themselves, I didn't really want to come to counseling, and didn't want to spend the money on that issue, but then the issue becomes bigger and bigger, and then they wish they had come sooner. And I never like for financial reasons to be the reason why folks can't get therapy. So whether that's with me doing my best to accommodate or referring to another therapist who I feel like can be of benefit for them as well. That's my approach with it is people should be able to get the help that they're seeking for.
And I agree. I think there's, and again, we make choices based on what we value most. And so I think everybody can afford to pay something in that area. And it's always nice when, myself included, not letting finances be a barrier to getting healthy and well. And that's a big topic, but it is something that people need to consider themselves too, and taking responsibility for, how they spend their money and where they value those things. So I really appreciate that shows that we care is when we're willing to, address that, the cost factor, because it can hold somebody back in a lot of ways too. So when it comes to the past, I know I've heard the saying, don't let the past take up too much time of today or something like that. But that's pretty easier said than done, right? And that's why it's so important to spend time, with you and Jennifer and the others in your Thrive Forward Therapy counseling center. I'm trying to think, what's it called? But I love that you guys all seem to have such a care for people and a constant attention to people's needs. So that's awesome. And in my Man Up dialogue that I've been writing, I wrote, therapy is not the worst thing that could happen to you. It's like, I think a lot of people are like, oh, they're in therapy, like that's such a bad thing. And it's definitely not the worst thing that could happen to us, right? You mentioned how much, other things can actually happen because you don't address something, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so I know that I'm going to ask for a final thought here, so I'll give you just a minute to be considering what your final thought is.
Okay.
But I want to say, too, that I think, I say this all the time, your health matters, men. Don't make fun of it. It's not funny. Don't take your health for granted. Do more. Don't think it's too hard. You can do this. You can do hard things. And don't think about allowing it, it'll all shake out, or it'll, whatever, all the different comments that I hear as well. I want to encourage men to plan and prepare and execute on those things that they really want, and don't let another day go by. Start thinking about, what do you want out of your life, and where do you want to be in 3 years or a year or 5 years or 10 years? And especially those who have children at home, really setting an example for those areas that are more valuable than, here, son, let me teach you how to drive a tractor, or some of the manly things, which are great too. But one of my quotes is, if you build healthy habits into your daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly life, you will not live a life from which you feel the need to escape. And I think there's a lot of things that people can avoid, and there's certainly, you don't want to focus on everything, every little thing that happens. Sometimes you do need to just let it go, and not let it control you. But then there are other things that I think you just need someone to help you with a different perspective on the matter. So, all right, Austin, what one final thought, and would you like to share with our listeners?
Yeah. I think I would just end on the fact that in our culture, we need strong and healthy men. I think so much of the time, especially with, I think a lot of times of like TV sitcom dads where they're kind of goofy and dumb and not really needed in some sense. But, I feel like that couldn't be farther from the truth is, when we have strong men, healthy men and healthy dads in society, they bring so much to our lives and to our families. And, when we have that, life can just flourish more. And when we're missing that, we really do feel that impact. So I guess for a final thought is, if you feel like you're in a place where, you want to get healthier and to kind of deal with some of the problems that you may be experiencing, reach out for help. It's not as scary as it seems. And I'm, I really do try to make the Thrive Forward office as welcoming and comforting as possible, and not intimidating at all. So that would be my final thought.
I love that. I wrote it down, strong, healthy men. I think that's awesome. And I can tell, and they've already kind of met you now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they don't see you. I mean, they'll see your photo, but so that'll kind of open the door, I hope, for a lot of the men in the world and that are going to listen to this, not only today live, but obviously for forever. These podcasts live on. So
it's in the cloud now.
It is. It's in the cloud. Well, I appreciate you, Austin. I'm so grateful for your time today. And my closing thoughts are this: no one is a success alone. Anyone that you see anywhere in the world on any platform did not get there by themselves, on their own skills or on their own merit. Really, any actor, any CEO, any athlete, any millionaire, billionaire, they all have a village of skilled, educated, caring teammates and managers and coaches and counselors. And at Whole Food Health Coach, I always say we are the coach in your corner. That's our thing. And I started that years ago because I always felt like somebody needed to be in my corner. And I'm just grateful that there are Thrive Forward Therapy, and others like you out there. But I remember a cartoon that I saw just recently, and it was Winnie the Pooh and Piglet walking hand in hand in the 100-acre woods. Mm-hmm. And Piglet asks, "Pooh, What's the bravest thing you've ever said? Help, said Pooh. I love that because reaching out for help isn't easy. It's never easy, but it's most difficult, I think, for those who assume they don't need any. You've been listening to Work Well with Stephanie Wolfe, brought to you by the Whole Food Health Coach LLC, where we make your goals our goals and you're never alone on your wellness journey. For information about our corporate wellness programs, virtual classes, or our individual coaching programs, go to wholefoodhealthcoach.com. Our coaching is available virtually anywhere in the country. I'm Stephanie Wolfe, wishing you well personally and professionally. See you next week live or on your favorite podcast channel. Until then, choose life.